Hi everyone. Today I want to tell you about Final Fantasy XIV TTRPG, that is a tabletop RPG based on MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV. The tabletop RPG itself is not out yet. It will be out in 3 months at the end of May. But last week in Japan there was an event where people could come and play a test version. They used the exact starter set that will be released in May. Although I don't live in Japan, there are journalists from various gaming websites who attended the event, played the game and wrote articles about it. Although the game has not been released yet, a lot of things about how it plays are already clear. The game begins naturally with the creation of the character, but on this test event they did not create anything and just used pre-generated characters from the starter set. In the full version of the game, there will be 13 classes, which as I understand is less than an MMORPG. Exactly which 13 classes will be in tabletop RPG is not yet clear, but the starter set will have only 4 classes, or jobs as they called in FF14. It is a warrior, dragon knight, black mage, and white mage. They also represent 4 roles: the tank, physical DPS, magical DPS, and support. The character sheet looks like this. Here in the corner are all of our stats. The main stats here are drawn from the game: strength, dexterity, vitality, intelligence, and mind. Secondary stats are the following: physical and magical defense. As I understand, this is like the armor class in D&D, that is, the minimal number that the enemy needs to roll on the die to hit you. The next stat is alertness, which is also something like perception from D&D, mainly used to avoid being taken by surprise. The next stat is movement, that is, how many squares character can move and around. We also have MP, magic points that we spend on using all sorts of abilities. It says on the sheet that they are restored at the end of the turn by 2. Then there is HP, our meat points, and HP barrier, which I understand is a bonus above the maximum HP that you can get from support skills. Next, the character has items, but here no one had any items recorded. I can't say for sure if it's because in the full game there will be no itemization at all, and you won't be able to change armor and weapons, for example, or put some magical trinkets. There may really be no items at all, but I think it will be assumed that your character has the standard equipment for their job, and then some upgraded gear, such as a powerful weapon, will probably be recorded separately and provide some bonuses. And the last thing we can record on a character sheet is a profile. That is, any personal information for role-playing purposes. Like why you went looking for adventure. One journalist's character was addicted to gambling, and now he has to pay off his debts, so he's on an adventure to make money. There's also a character level. In Final Fantasy XIV itself, I think there are 90 levels. In the playtest set there were 3 types of characters divided by level. I.e., for each job there is the 30th level sheet, the 40th, and the 50th. Apparently leveling in the full game will be about the same. That is, there will not be such a kind of, today I got 1 level, tomorrow I got 2 levels. Most likely the level will be awarded in the same tens. So, level 10 to 20, then to 30, and so on. By the way, the characters' professions can be changed. It's very straightforward, just like in MMORPGs. In the middle of a session you can just say that I'm no longer a dragon knight, now I'm a white mage, and just take another character sheet, and you're a white mage. Next we have here, as you can see, most of the sheet is taken up by the character's skills. Magic and various attacks. They are predefined in the starter set. The ones that are grayed out are not usable, the ones that are highlighted, you can use. In the full rule book, I think you can choose which skills you want to play with. More on that later, when we get to the combat. And on the character sheet, we have one ability left on top, which is our ultimate. With his you can do a lot of damage, or if you're a tank, You can mitigate the damage and repel it back to the enemy. And underneath we have more class features. Dragon Knight, for example, can do combos. Usually you can attack only once per round, but thanks to this combo ability, Dragon Knight can attack with all the skills that are included in the combo. So that's kind of the character sheet we have here. Now let's take a look at the game's engine. It uses 20-sided and 6-sided dice. Basically the same as in D&D, but without other funny dice. The D20 roll is used for basic checks, whether in combat or not. You need to roll a number equal to or greater than the difficulty of the check. And D6 are used to determine how much damage you've dealt or how much health you've restored. There is an interesting peculiarity with D20. The tagline is, "There are no misses in this game." That is, there are no unsuccessful checks. Well, in battle, misses definitely don't happen, but as for all other situations, the witnesses' testimonies diverge, so to speak. One article says that there are no misses at all, and in the second article there is a recording of a game where the GM says, "You couldn't do it, you failed." So it seems that misses don't occur only in battle, and in all other situations, outside of combat, everything works the same way as in a conventional role-playing game. If you compare this character sheet with the character sheet from D&D, for example, then a question emerges immediately. Where's the rest of the, stuff? Where are all the skills, like athletics, stealth, swimming? There's nothing here, apparently. As, for example, we are told by D&D, there are 3 pillars of the game: combat, adventure, and social interaction. In FF14, social and adventure parts of the game clearly only serve to get you to the combat, and therefore do not need some specific rules to regulate those aspects of the game. Don't need to bother, so to speak, just roll a d20, add a stat bonus, and that's it. Once you've reached the enemies, once the fight starts, then there will be detailed rules for you. So, let's see how combat works in this game. As you can see, combat takes place on a standard square grid, as seen in D&D and Pathfinder and many other games. The character has several squares of movement, which they can travel through during a turn. Interestingly, they can distribute this movement throughout the turn. It means that here you don't just approach, then strike, and then you're standing there. Here you can move about, do some action, and then move again. There is no really an initiative systems in combat. Players always go first, simply by agreeing among themselves in what order they will go. But then this order cannot be changed until the battle ends or next phase of the battle comes. In their turn, the character can move, perform one main action and one sub-action and one more instant action. Although I'm not too sure about instant action, because I can't really see what's written on the character sheet about it. Skills that characters use have various attributes, such as physical attack or magic attack, and if it is magic attack, then with what element it is. So, apparently there will be various resistances and weaknesses on enemies. Also, each skill has a price in MP. Then there's target skills affix, whether it's a single target or an area of effect. There's also range. Some are 1 square melee range, some are far ranged. If the skill is an attack, it says what check you should make. Make a check, you roll a d20, add the appropriate stat bonus specified in the skill description, and you need to roll equal or greater than the enemy's defense stat. But here's the thing, for example, in D&D, if you roll less than the target number, you will miss and nothing will happen. Here there is no such thing. In FF14, all skills that require a roll have 2 effects. One is the basic effect, and the second is called the direct hit effect. For example, if you're a Dragon Knight and you perform a true thrust attack, it has the basic effect of dealing 3 points of damage. And if you roll well, achieve the target number, and make a direct hit, you deal an additional 2 6-sided dice of damage. And that's basically it. Other skills work on the same principle. If you get a direct hit, you inflict additional damage. Although if you are a white mage, for example, you don't need to roll any particular number to cast heal on your allies, you just heal them. Also, you don't have to roll for sub-actions either. Sub-actions just give you either some buffs or debuffs the enemy or apply damage over time effects. If you roll a 20 on d20, it's a crit. Crit increases the damage dealt or health recovered by you twofold. And if you roll a 1, nothing bad happens. That is, there are no critical misses here. Well, there is no misses at all. Overall, it's quite a nice mechanic in my opinion. Even if you have a dice cancer and can't roll to hit to save your life, you are still being useful thanks to basic effects of the skills. And there will be no such thing as standing around with an opponent and missing each other for 5 successive turns. Enemies work on the same mechanics as player characters, but they have their own special abilities. For example, the article gives an example where the boss had an omen marker attack. This is like when an MMORPG zone is highlighted and in a few seconds there will be a strong attack there. Omen marker is something like that. And accordingly, the player characters either have to somehow escape from this zone, or if it is some more tricky ability, then do something else. For example, in the article, they described that the boss has an ability that deals a lot of damage to a selected target, but damage is also divided among all the characters who are near the main target. That is, to counter that attack, they have not to run away from the zone, but to run up to the character on whom this omen marker was placed and to share the damage. In the starter set there are tiles with those markers, like that. I think you can remove pieces of it to change the area of effect. So you can make it 3 by 3 instead of 5 by 5. Then, here are some more interesting features of this game. Dying here is quite difficult. If your health points reach 0, you can still be revived and you won't die, you won't lose your character, and you will be able to continue your adventures in one piece. In addition, unlike most tabletop RPGs, there is no HP and MP management throughout the session. Here, as in MMORPGs, HP and MP after the battle are immediately restored to their maximum values. Some battles are divided into several phases, between which you can change the initiative order in the group. And there is an optional rule that if you lose a battle, you are not just all dead and go create new characters. No, you can attempt to repeat the battle from the phase in which you failed. That is just a straightforward board game feel. And as I already mentioned, another feature of the game is that you can change the character's job at almost any time during the session. Reporter in the article expressed an interesting opinion that this game is not about making a build for your character, but about how you will together make a build for your party to win a particular encounter. And the opportunity to easily change the jobs naturally helps it. So, that's kind of it. I find this game very reminiscent of D&D 4. Except that everything but the combat has been removed. That is more of a tabletop wargame than a full-fledged tabletop role-playing game. But of course it doesn't mean that you can't play a normal RPG campaign using this game. It's just that the rules of the game are clearly focused on combat. And this game is probably not aimed at hardcore tabletop RPG players, but at the people who play Final Fantasy XIV video game and they got together and decided to play the board game version of Final Fantasy XIV. And well, that's not quite a board game, but who cares, right? They came here to fight monsters on the board, and not to do this role-playing thing of yours. If they want to roleplay, they would go to a virtual club with catgirls in FF14 MMORPG, where you can rent a private room and roleplay there all you want. And in this tabletop game, we're gonna move the character tokens around, roll dice, and have fun. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, I don't really care for it. But some people like it games like this, I'm glad they can play it. As for the release of the game, as I said, it will be released in May, on the 25th. To be more precise, it will be release of the starter set. As far as I understand, there will be the same release schedule as there was in D&D. When the starter set was released first, and then the main book came out. I think that how it was at least. In the starter set there will be a book for the player, where everything necessary for beginners will be compiled, and a book for beginner game masters, including 3 ready-made scenarios. There will also be pre-made character sheets. The same ones we saw here in the pictures, for classes, 3 different character levels for each. And there will be dice, 6d20 and 10d6. And all the other stuff we saw in the pictures too. Meaning maps for encounters, tokens for characters, tokens for abilities, rules summary, and game guide. And then the real core rulebook will be released, which will have all the rules for both players and game master, all the classes and everything else that was not included in the starter set. And there will also be a separate book for game masters, which will include all sorts of tips for running the game, a set of scenarios, and apparently a collection of monsters to fight will also be included in the master's book. Anyway, that's what this Final Fantasy XIV TTRPG looks like. I think it looks like D&D 4. It looks like a tabletop wargame and is more geared for those who like tabletop wargames, and for players of the original video game who want to sit down together at a table and roll dice. And that's it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.